Hello, Saners, and welcome back to another episode and another installment of Teams. I brought out the candy stripes as we head up into Gather Round in Adelaide this weekend. As you know, we go through the team list that just been announced. I've got some great guests with me tonight as well, and we'll have a bit of discussion regarding our matchup with the Tigers this week. So let me bring in our guests for today. We've got Tom, we have Alana, and we have Sam as well. Sam back with us for another week. Welcome, guys. How are we feeling?
Feeling good. Up to get back on the winners list.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a disappointing game on the weekend. I thought from the maybe first quarter and a half we were okay, and then we sort of played Essendon style as well. How did you see the weekend, Sam?
Missed opportunity. Many times we could have put them to bed. Easy shots missed. Even Mateus Philipou's snap, I think it was in the last quarter. There were 4 or 5 other options and it ended up going out on the full. So it's one of these losses that you'll end up ruining later on in the season. It was not a great one, particularly when it's 4 points and you know you're in the game and you could have won it easily, but you don't. That hurts.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a game that it's weird. I always look at it like who won, who lost. I thought that was a game that St Kilda lost.
Yes.
Not necessarily the Essendon won, even though I know Essendon did win. But the way that we played, considering how bad we were, I thought that was, as you said, a real missed opportunity and could ultimately be like an 8-point game in terms of ladder position, given that Essendon will probably be in the same area in terms of the middle six that I think we'll be in as well. Alana, what were your thoughts watching that with the missed opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty crucial loss. Like you said, both sort of vying for that top 8 position. No one likes losing against Essendon, especially when Stringer kicks the winning goal. Pretty much what I didn't want to happen. The only good thing was that Gresham didn't finish it off with that last kick. But wow, so frustrating. Such a hard game to watch. Just first quarter to dominate play and just not put it on the scoreboard. Just so frustrating. And I just feel like a broken record a little bit. Like it's just a constant thing with us. I feel like it's been happening. I can't remember the last time we were a team that kicked well and converted. It's just a common theme, I feel. So yeah, just a little bit shattered. And I completely agree. I think it was them not winning it, but us losing it. That was the comment I was going to make. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our opportunities in front of goal, we had a really good process going, from defense to forward, and really the strong ability to put the scoreboard pressure on, as you mentioned. And ideally, halfway through the third quarter, the game probably should have been over. In regards to that, I think Caminiti missed 2 gettable runs, Membry missed 1, Philippou missed 1, Machito missed 1, which I think we've spoken about a couple of times. His goal kicking's pretty poor. There was another one. Jack Higgins missed 1. What was that, Sam?
Said he go directly in front. That was a bad
one. I feel like that was sort of like the Geelong one where it was almost like a momentum killer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gets that. I think at the time we were like maybe 30 points ahead, goes to 6 goals. Like you can just get the confidence on your shoulders and just run with it. But he misses it. I think they went down, they kicked a goal, and that's the start of the spiral. So that's last week. Let's focus on this week. We got a really good chance to not only win, but put some really strong scoreboard pressure on the Tigers. They've lost 3 pretty big outs, which we'll discuss in a second. Obviously, our team as well. But what are your thoughts heading to Gather Round, Norwood Oval, not even at Adelaide Oval? So we're on like a little bit of a country track. What are we looking for this week to turn that around?
I think Norwood Oval, from everything I've heard and from last year, is that it's a pretty small ground. So I feel like I'm worried that it doesn't suit our game style as well as some of the other grounds we play on in terms of being able to, run and spread and the fitness that we talk about a fair bit. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to winning the midfield, which makes me nervous. I still think we'll get the job done, but I think it's going to have to be one of those ones where we actually get on top in the midfield pretty early and set the tone.
Yeah, I feel like it's a broken record, and I mean, Sam will probably agree with this, where the midfield is probably causing a lot of the problems at the moment. I was a little bit surprised by how dominant the Essendon midfield was. I thought we had the bodies to be able to withstand their inside game and get it out on the outside, which I think we still did pretty well. Hill had a few open spaces. Just poor decision making was a cause of that. Richmond this week, Sam, they've got some really good inside mids, Taranto, Hopper, Jack Graham, I think, is returning as well. Dusty Martin's back, conveniently for them as well. So how do we go about, maintaining, at least balancing that performance between the two teams?
Well, I mean, that's their strong suit, but they've got holes in every other position on the field. Bolter's out. Tom Lynch, who's arguably one of their better players, is out. Let's say they're a 7-goal worse off team without those two players. So if their midfield can get on top of us, I think they'll get a few look-ins, but I wouldn't be expecting them to win that game by any stretch of the mind. There's far too many injuries. They're very weak at the moment. Yes, they just came off a win against Sydney, but at what cost? 3 injuries. I don't see this as a game that will be hard to win. I'm sure they'll put up a fight. They always do. That's what the Tigers do. That's what they're known for. But that being said, they do have an elite midfield, and I can't not see them getting on top of our midfield. One person I want to shout out is Zach Jones. I thought he was great last week. He was a few silly errors, but in terms of get up and go and grunt and hunt the ball down, give that edge to the midfield that we're really lacking, I think he was a standout for me. He didn't get the ball that much, but when he did, he made it count.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. And also, go, Lana, you're up.
Yeah, I was just going to completely agree. Yeah, I think Zach Jones is just that perfect sort of player we need in there, particularly when our midfield's so, I don't want to say weak, but when we don't sort of have the rotations, he's really handy to throw in there, and he's just going to bring that effort and that grunt and a bit of biff that we miss. So, yeah, I thought he at least really supported Steele and Seb. There weren't too many last week, but, yeah, he definitely did his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a comment here from Beth already, which I'm going to show. Fatherhood is making the making of Zach Jones. And I think even not necessarily, I mean, it's good timing as well, but I think in the off season, there was a game where he got injured. I think it might have been the Kangaroos last year, where that's where he did his leg. And Jake and a few of the Saints TV boys were down there doing some interviews, and you could see the dejectedness, of confidence in himself then. He was absolutely gutted. And I feel like in the off season, he's really put a method to his madness to go, all right, let's head down, bum up, let's work hard, and let's get onto the pitch or onto the field and really contribute. As you said, Sam, he doesn't touch the ball 30 times a game. He doesn't need to. But if he can have a presence in the midfield where he's, full guns blazing and really contributing to get the ball to a Hill, to a Nazaya, to Sinclair, that's all he has to do, and that's his job complete. So I think that's a really good point that you made. Before we bring up the teams, there's already some discussion in regards to particular players, and I want to get your thoughts, guys, just before we do bring up that team. There's a comment from Trent. Actually, I'm going to bring up another one just before that one, from Shazad. So Bonner has to go out. From a statistical point of view, last week he was really good. 32 disposals. I think he gained nearly a kilometre in ball ground and gaining territory. But he did have a league, I think it's a record in the AFL for 17 turnovers as well. How do you rate his game, his impact to our team, and would you drop him or would you continue keeping him the way going forward?
I think it's interesting if you did drop him, because I think would that have to be the first time someone's had 30 plus possessions and then gets dropped? I know he had 17 clangers, which is obviously pretty poor, but I think he had a really solid game against Geelong, and then a couple of sort of iffy games, and this one, 17 clangers sort of speaks for itself. But I couldn't drop him just based off he's getting the ball. I'd want to back him in, give him another crack. 32 touches and you send him to the twos. I don't know. I don't know, like, and I think is there a chance maybe to get subbed if he's going to do that again? I don't know, but I'd probably be persisting with him for another week at least. Yeah, I'd be having a little bit more faith, especially Ross the week after the match before. He was sort of talking him up a bit, and he made a couple of errors, and Ross was really backing him in. So I just can't see him dropping him after saying that 1 week, and then next week it's see you later. So yeah, I'd be surprised if he got dropped.
Yeah, for the sake of my AFL fantasy side, I hope he stays in the team. But it's a tough one because I think, he made some really bad errors. But with the turnover stat, I mean, obviously, if you have that many turnovers in a game, some of them aren't going to be your fault, but there are going to be a lot that are. But towards the end of the game, when he was taking kickouts, one thing I was at the ground, I was up in the gods. And it just, from where I was sitting, it just didn't really look like anyone was really moving for him. And so he kept on being forced to just go long down the line. And then it would be a repeat entry for Essendon. We turn the ball over. And like that kind of thing probably goes against him in terms of turnovers, but it's not 100% his fault. There's also like the element of, well, was anyone actually giving him a proper option? And I mean, he still obviously didn't play his best game, like by a long stretch, but I think he's shown in the preseason and then against the Cats that he can be incredibly damaging and a real big asset. So personally, I hope we stick with him. It's sort of a balancing act because he's probably on a little bit of thin ice. Like you can't just keep on coughing up turnovers like that. But at the same time, you don't want him to go into his shell and not try and bite off those kicks when that's sort of the point of him being in the team. So I don't know. I hope we persist, but yeah, it's probably 1 or 2 more games like that, and you can't really argue against dropping him at that point.
Sammy, do you agree with that in terms of a lot of the turnovers, especially in that back end or the back part of the game, were movement related, lack of forward structure without King, or is there something that is more?
Yeah, I do believe so. Off the top of my head, I'm pretty certain that if you kick the ball to a pack, it is still counted as an effective disposal. I'm pretty certain off the top of my head. So that doesn't count as a turnover, even if an opposition player marks it. So that makes the stats more damning. But why should we condemn someone for one bad game? That to me doesn't make sense. And it seems like a classic sort of loggerhead footy supporter thing to be like, oh, we'll drop him. We've got to have someone to blame. It's this person because he did X, Y, and Z, and that's the reason why. He's had one bad game. He's great in the preseason, solid enough against Geelong, pretty good against Collingwood. You've got to back consistency. One bad game, I don't think that's worth dropping. If it was like 3 or 4 in a row, I'd be saying, okay, well, probably got to consider a few other options there, but consistency is key, and I think he has been consistent enough to warrant staying in the side. I don't think it's fair to drop someone for one pretty bad game. That's just my opinion.
And I like it, and I like what Alana said as well. In the game against Geelong, he had a few turnovers. I think there was a few smothers where he's tried to sort of wait an extra half a second, and it's allowed the Geelong player to come in. Ross has backed him. That says to me, even though, again, he's had a few turnovers in relation to that, he's taking the game on and doing what he's being asked to do. That's his job, to kick the ball long, to gain territory. I think Max King being out was definitely an impact without having a tall target. Membry didn't have a great game. Caminiti was okay, but Membry, Sharman were probably 2 of the bottom 5 players for us on the weekend. So that's not going to happen with Max King coming back, especially against a smaller Richmond defence as well. I look at that and say, you know what, let's put him back in, run with it. Stick to your game plan, stick to your role. You do what the coaches have told you, because now we've got our right forward structure going forward. We should see a little bit more of a better result, and then allowing us to impact the scoreboard as well. So I think for now, hold him off, leave him in the team. For those that are watching at home, share your thoughts as well. Thanks, Trent and Shazad, for those comments. And we'll have a look and see, what happens with that. Let's have a look. Let's bring up the team. We're on a Sunday 3:20. So we've got an extended bench as well. So we've got a little bit more of a discussion this week, which is probably a good thing. because there's probably a few players that we're looking at in regards to input and sort of lack of input as well. I just want to bring up a comment from Beth just while we look at the teams there. Philippou giving me a headache. Heart definitely in the game, but just a possible disconnect between effort and execution. Coming out of contract, playing in South Australia, so don't want him feeling on the fringe. In regards to that comment for going back home, my understanding is he's on the verge of signing. That's the strong word I have. I think they're just finalising the finer details in terms of money and years. But from what I've been told, both him and Josh Battle are absolutely going nowhere. So from a contract standpoint, don't need to worry about that. But let's talk about his performance. I think for the first 3 weeks, it's been a little bit disappointing. What's something that he needs to work on, especially this week? Good opportunity to respond against the Tigers.
I actually thought he had an okay game last week. I thought his first half, he took them on a bit more. He found space. He didn't just do the little handball. He actually backed himself, and that's where I was going to go, because I don't know if anyone saw the goal he kicked against Collingwood. I don't know if you saw it, but Windhanger straight away went straight to him and said, "Back yourself," and I loved that. And I just think that's what he's got to do. He's got to start backing himself. He's talented, and he needs to start owning that. Because I saw glimpses of him last year where he sort of had that bit of swagger about him, and I was like, yes, I want more of that, Philippou. Back yourself. Don't just do those little handballs. Don't second guess. You get that ball and you just go first instinct. That's what I would say. Back yourself.
Is it possible that he, because he's still one of the youngest players in the leagues, and one of our youngest players, that he's not intimidated, but just a little bit nervous to sort of go, actually, this is my team, this is my moment, I'm going to own it. Is that something that can play a part in the mindset, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's a little bit caught up in sort of doing the right thing, like doing the team thing, instead of just playing his natural game. So, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And, yeah, he's 19, so a lot of people are on his back, but he's really young, so give him time.
Yeah, he's so young. He's so young. He's like, you forget, I think because he had such an outstanding first season, you forget that he's playing his 20-odd game. Like, he's going to have some bad games. He's going to have some great games. But he's still so young. He's still learning the game, really, at the level. So, yeah, I haven't really thought – I mean, I think he's been probably far from our worst so far this year. And he's 19 years old. So, yeah, I think you're right. Like, backing him in is probably, good for him.
Yeah. But I think his only detractor is his decision-making. His skills, for the most part, are pretty decent. He does overuse the ball and overhandball a bit when he should be kicking it. But the only real detractor of his game is his decision-making and decision-making ability. For the most part, I think it's not great. It could be a lot better, but also that comes with age and experience. It's the same with Mitch Owens and a couple of the other younger kids. They're not going to be there right now. They're not going to be there for another couple of years. Not everyone's a Nick Dacos and can get 93% disposal efficiency every game. That's not the way it works. So as soon as he has that down pat, I think he's going to be an excellent player, but it's going to take time to develop. But the more games we get into him now, the better.
Yeah, and I think we still got to look at, and it's more, I think St Kilda supporters know this, but from a media perspective, those young players that are coming through, they're still very young. Windhagen, Naz, Owens are in the start of their third year. Philippou just started his second. Darcy Wilson is, first year player. Angus Hastie, which we saw a little bit of on the weekend, first year player. Like, these players are coming through, they're talented, but it's now getting that confidence on an AFL level to, work it with the big boys and to actually, go from being a good player to a dominant player that can be a game changer. And I think we've got a few of those prototypes ready. It's just about, practice makes perfect. And, the more time they get, the better they will be. Let's have a look at this extended lineup that we've got for this weekend. So the one change confirmed so far, and that's Marcus Windhager coming out for the suspension. And if he won, to be perfectly honest with you, but we take it, we accepted it. He's out for a week. And then Max King comes back. How important is that in for us against Richmond?
It's an extra 5 goals on the board.
Yeah.
He has a field day every time we play Richmond. I think they usually put Noah Bolter on him. So without Noah Bolter, it's going to be interesting to see who they're going to throw at him. But yeah, he loves playing Richmond. He always kicks a bag. So yeah, it's big.
It's not even just the goals and kicks; it's the impact that has on Membry and Owens and the other guys down there. Like they're not getting the number one defender anymore, and particularly with the outs of Richmond this week. Like who's going to cover King, but who's going to cover Membry? Who's going to cover the rest of them? Like I think King's in doesn't just bring what King brings off his own boot. It just helps our structure so much up forward.
Absolutely. And I think this year he's been very consistent in his groundwork as well. I think previous years, he's always been a one effort, pony where he gets the ball, great. If he doesn't, we'll just wait for the next contest. This year, he seems to have a change of mindset where, worst case scenario, brings the ball to ground, but then he follows up. He does a second, a third, a fourth effort, and it's just impacting. And it allows Membry space, it allows Sharman space, it allows Higgins space, Butler. Like it just opens everything up. And it makes it a lot more, free flowing for us going forward. While we're on the forward line, so King coming back, massive in. Again, looking at the Richmond defence, I think they might have to put Daniel Rioli on Nathan Broad's shoulders to sort of handle King, to be perfectly honest, because they like height, and they do usually throw Bolter back in these situations, but they don't have that luxury this week. I wanted to get your thoughts on Sharman versus Caminiti. I thought Caminiti last week was pretty good. First game back for the year, kicked some two crucial goals, missed a couple, but I thought Sharman's input was nearly non-existent. I definitely agree with the tactical sub that was made. Can we play both of them in the same team? And if not, then who do we pick? And for those that are watching at home, comment your thoughts as well. Are we picking Sharman or are we picking Caminiti?
I'd pick Sharman over Caminiti. Versatility. He can play back. He can play forward. He's fairly consistent. He had a pretty stinky game on the weekend, but he is fairly consistent. Gets a lot of nice intercept marks. Caminiti doesn't provide as much pressure and is nowhere near as versatile as Cooper. So I'd probably pick Cooper over Caminiti if we were to choose one.
Yeah.
I reckon. I definitely reckon we probably can't play both of them. I feel like we start to get a bit too tall if we do, and it probably limits the versatility of the team. And even though, I agree that I was very happy with Caminiti's game on the weekend, and Cooper had an off game as well. But I think I agree. The versatility that Cooper offers is an added bonus, and I think on his day he's probably better up forward slightly at the moment than Caminiti.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think those two fighting for position is really, really healthy, because it's not going to allow one of them to just have an easy run and go, okay, well, we can just play our role, kick a goal, and we're sweet. The importance I think that Caminiti played last week is to say to Sharman, if you don't start pulling your finger out on a consistent basis, and I do agree, I think he's one of, he fits our forward structure really well. He's versatile. You can put him in nearly any position on the ground, defense, wing, and up forward as well. His marking abilities probably the second best in the team behind King, actually maybe third best behind Membry as well. But I think that having that strength for competition is only going to make both of them better. And I think that's a really good start to having and identifying that third forward. From a defense point of view, Alana, how are you finding Stocker and I'm going to put Naz in there. I know he's more of a ball user, but he's listed in defense. How are you finding their one-on-one matchups defensively against the Smalls?
Liam Stocker's frustrated me a little bit just in terms of I feel like he's getting beaten a bit on those one-on-ones, and even last week he sort of got caught with the ball in the air and just made the wrong call, and I just feel like he's making those wrong calls more often than he should. To me, he's one of those players you don't really notice. He does a couple of okay things, but doesn't sort of set the world on fire. Like he's sort of just that underwhelming. I don't know. He's just sort of there. Like if you didn't play, would you notice? Whereas Naz, he has ability to win us a game. So I love Naz. I don't know. As in like a one-on-one contest, like in the air, and that if he's gonna win it, but he's definitely going to give you a contest. And with the ball in his hands, he's our best player. Like you want the ball in his hands, so that's the difference there. Like if we can get the ball in his hands and he can get 30 touches, it goes a long way to us winning because his kicking is elite. So I think they're sort of chalk and cheese in terms of players. Yeah.
And I think being at Norwood as well will help Naz, doing those fine 45 lace out kicks, hitting King on the lead against the depleted Richmond side. I think he'll be very good. I think his one-on-one contest work in the back half of the ground has improved as well. I thought against Geelong, he got found out maybe a little bit. I think they tried to isolate Dempsey on him for a couple of times, and that's when Dempsey kicked a few goals. But I think since then he's learned a little bit. He's gone to work on it to fix the craft up and be, at worst, a 50-50 bet in regards to bringing the ball to ground or marking the ball. And I think as a small defender, that's all you need to do. And then allows Wilkie and Battle to do their intercepts as well. I'm just going to bring up a comment here previously. Let me just find it. It was in relation to Cordy and Dougal Howard. Now, Dougal, I think, is still on the injury list just for another week or two, and you guys can correct me if I am wrong. But who do you prefer as a key defensive, stalwart for our back six? Is it Cordy or is it Howard going forward?
One-on-one, I'd go Dougal Howard. Ball in hand in the back line, I'd probably choose Cordy because that loopy backwards handball that Dougal does more often than not stitches us up 9 times out of 10. They're both very different players and they both make very silly errors, but I think all in all, Dougal Howard is a better defender than Zane Cordy. He's just not a very good ball user, but neither is Zane Cordy. So, it's a minimal difference kind of thing.
Regardless of which one is in the team, I wouldn't mind if they were both banned from trying to rip 45s out of the back line. Because the amount of times last season in particular that Dougal Howard would try to rip a 45 in the back 50 and it would cost us a goal sent me mad. And then Zane Cordy has got the most awkward, I love him, but he's got the most awkward, unnatural looking kicking style. I'm not sure he's ever hit the ball cleanly kicking it. Love him, but yeah, either way, whoever's back there, stop ripping 45s, please.
I think you hit the nail on the head. One-on-one contest, I think they both do a pretty decent job in terms of, limiting the tall forward and from impacting the scoreboard. But you're right. As soon as you mark the ball, get Sinks to run around, Naz to run around, Wilkie to run around. Please don't kick the ball because as soon as you do, my head goes into my hands and it's like, oh, God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Sorry, Alana, go quickly.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like Cordy is still makes your heart race when he's got the ball, but Dougal's, I think he's a whipping boy because he's guaranteed, he seems to just always cost you 2 goals a game. And they're really obvious mistakes, smack, bang, it's a goal, straight over your head. They're more obvious. So I think that's why he gets that sort of bad rap. And I think Cordy is a little bit more subtle with his mistakes most of the time. Or it's that 45-meter kick that eventuates in a goal, whereas Dougal's mistakes are direct bang goal. So it's sort of which of the less of the two evils, but
it's the tall timbers. It's their job. It's like a ruckman, kicking the goal. They're just not good at doing it. Just before we bring the team list off, there's obviously 7 players on the interchange there. From those 7, who would we like to see sort of gear up on Sunday, and who's going to be the unlucky ones to miss out?
I don't think Campbell's going to be in the side.
No.
They do this pretty often. is included.
I was going to say he's always that designated emergency just in case Rowe doesn't come up. Then it's not a break of laws.
Yeah, and if I was making the decision, probably Dan Butler. I'd give the kids over a run over Dan Butler. I think Richmond's defence is a little bit weak at the moment. Their side as a whole is a little bit weak at the moment. If there's any time to run the kids, it's now. So I'd probably put like a Lance Collard or a Garcia over Butler.
Just before we jump to Tom and Alana with that. So Richmond do like to use their halfbacks. Loston, Rioli, Short. That's their instigators for offense. Does having Dan Butler then put a bit more pressure on them, or do you say to a Lance Collard, you need to run all day because this is how they sort of move the ball? What's your sort of opinions on that?
It's interesting.
Yeah, I can make him run all day. Make him work hard. There's some old cattle in that back line. And Richmond are fast in and around the midfield. Every other area of the ground, they're as slow as a wet week. So make them run, make them move, and you'll keep the ball out of their hands that way. So I think Collard would be of more benefit than Butler. But obviously Butler's forward 50 pressure is pretty elite. But outside of that, he doesn't do heaps.
Yeah, because I watched the Sandy game on the weekend, and Collard was very good from a goal perspective. I think he snagged 4. But I'd like to see more effort from a defensive point. And I think, especially this week against Richmond, if you can shut down 2 of those 3, whether it be Rioli, Short, Vlosten, whichever 2 you want to do, then you've already got the blueprint to win. Because that's where they get their generations from. They're the 3 sort of ball users going forward. So if you can stop, 60% of that, then you're already ahead. That's one reason I do like Butler. I think regardless of what he does on a scoreboard point of view, his pressure is probably the best that we have as a small forward in our list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Tom and Alana, you can either agree or disagree, whichever one you sit on. But I think it's a really good discussion point that we can have.
Yeah, no, I think I'd probably back Dan in this week, just because he used to be purely like our defensive forward, or that's what he turned into, to really sort of, he'd get his 7 tackles a game and put on that pressure, which I didn't really see much for him last week. So I do think he's on thin ice, especially with Collard kicking 4 goals. That to me says to Butler, you don't perform this week, you're back to the 2s. And I'm not sure what the go is this week with us playing in Adelaide. Like, if Collard's listed as an emergency, does he still get to play, or what's the situation with that?
In terms of for Sandy?
Yeah.
So VFL's got like a bye. They've got their interleague VFL versus SANFL. So that's, I think, why they're not too stressed about that, because he was going to have a week off regardless. So I think in these situations, they sort of take them all over. If they don't play, they do like a workout session either before or after to get sort of that, fitness into it. Tom, what do you think about, Collard, Butler, our small forwards? Who's going to miss out from that list?
Yeah, I really hate sitting on the fence. For me, it's very close to a 50-50. I think Butler's game was quite ordinary on the weekend, just in the sense of not really getting involved. You didn't really notice him that much. And when he did get the ball, and he has a tendency to do this, and I don't mind it when he's playing a good game, but when he got the ball, there were a couple of times where he just sort of got a bit cute with it and tried to sort of, I don't know, do something, pull some sort of champagne footy stuff when it's mate, we're about to lose against the Dons. Let's just do the simple things right here. So, yeah, he's definitely on thin ice. I've got to pick a side. I'll go. I wouldn't mind to see the ruthlessness of dropping him and putting Collard in. Give us another look at him. I didn't see the Sandy game, but if he kicked 4, he clearly played pretty well. But I do agree with your point about Butler's pressure definitely being an asset, and if he's the one that gets the nod, then he's got to bring that. He has to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we've spoken about it in the last couple of episodes regarding the teams. Small forwards, they don't need to kick, 8 goals between them. King, Memory, and Sharman on a majority basis, barring last week, they'll be able to do that. They'll be able to generate the main scores. But what they're going to do is cause the turnovers that allow Filippo to get a goal, Machito to get a goal, Jack Higgins to snag 1 or 2. And already that's totaling up to 4 or 5 goals extra. That's nearly 15 goals right there, just from a couple of turnovers and just normal free-flowing play. So I think last week was a bit of an anomaly where we probably should have put the game to bed nice and early, but we didn't. Comment here from Beth. Beth made some really good comments. So I want to bring this one up regarding Jack Sinclair. Missed the first game at Geelong, but what percent do we reckon Sinks is at? Adequate and very handy, but just not looking like our full strength Sinks. Share your thoughts, guys. And for those that are watching at home, what do we think regarding Jack Sinclair at the moment?
He's just come back from an injury. He's 29. Give him a couple of weeks to warm up. He's probably going to be sitting at the 70, 75% output for another week or two, which is fine. He's not a spring chicken anymore. So I think we need to realise that he is in the nearing the greatest hits era of his career. A couple more weeks. He's just come back from an injury. So I think we need to cut him a bit of slack there. He's still good. He's still effective. He just doesn't touch the ball 37,000 times a game, which is why we're not noticing him as much. That's all.
Yeah. You go, Tom.
I was just going to agree. I think, it's just match fitness at the moment for Sinks that he's missing, and probably a little bit of, you don't play those preseason games. You don't get the sort of, I don't know, maybe you're missing like a couple of % of game awareness at times. But, it's really, he's just building his fitness back. So I think, it'll take, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2-3 games he pulls another 35 touch, all Australian-esque performance out, and we're like, okay, well, Sinks is back.
Yeah, I'd pretty much be parroting what everyone else said. Yeah, I think we'll see Sinks back to his best soon. Yeah, I think he's at probably 75% at the moment, and he's making a few sort of uncharacteristic turnovers here and there that you just don't see him do. But I think that's just him getting back into the swing of things and speed of the game and all that. And it's Sinclair. He'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think his roles maybe not changed, but they brought in Bonner. Naz has developed a little bit. Jack Steele's playing some really good football. I think he's probably playing the best he's played for maybe 2 years. Looks free of clean bill of health and really using the ball well. So Ross is having some good weeks. So it's probably taking a little bit less, or more pressure off Sinclair as well, to be able to say, well, okay, we've got actual like a little bit of a crew with you now. Rather than you just having to do it all. So it sort of allows him to work into it a little bit. But I think you're all right. Give him a couple more weeks. Maybe not this week against Richmond, but in a couple of weeks where we got some tough games against the Giants and the Dogs. I think we'll see Sinks return to his absolute best and really show us what he can do. So overall, I think the team list is looking pretty good. I mean, we've still got some few injuries. Paddy Dow's not too far away in a couple of weeks. Mason Wood was back on the track training as well after his concussion / collarbone, so he shouldn't be too far away. Dukes is not far away. Windhager's got a week of suspension, which is disappointing, but he'll learn from that. So we're a month in. What do we really like so far in regards to our performances? I know we're 1 and 2, but there's still some things to like, and also some things that we really need to work on. Again, for the people that are listening, share your thoughts of what you've liked so far in 2024, and also what we need to improve on as we gear up for the next month of footy.
I think that, just not to be negative, but the first thing that sort of comes to mind in that question is just needing to just improve consistency of performance. And it's just a typical St Kilda thing. It like that loss on the weekend was so quintessential St Kilda, coming up against a team that we're going into the game thinking this should be easy, we should get this done. If we're half serious, we beat the Dons by 4 or 5 goals. and looking that way at the start, but not converting, and then managing to lose the game. Like, clutching defeat from the jaws of victory is so St Kilda that it's painful. So, yeah, in terms of things to improve, it's just that not just week to week, but quarter to quarter, 5-minute period to 5-minute period consistency that, you know, a young team, you hope that'll improve, but I don't know, I guess it's just something that scars St Kilda fans for however long that tends to be the way. So that's probably one of the biggest areas of improvement, not like a specific thing, but just in general.
And I agree. So go on, Lana.
Oh, like, how often do they do that when they'll go and beat someone like a Collingwood and you're like, oh, we have arrived. And then we go and lose to Essendon and you're like, back to square one. Like, this has just set us back. And yeah, they just love to just, you know, give your hopes up and then
it's a little bit of a tease and then it falls down quite quickly. Just in relation to that, Tom, against Essendon, for 120 minutes of a game, Essendon led for about 8.5 minutes. And that was all in the last quarter. So I think that for me is the important part that drives me insane is you had the blueprint all game. You withstood anything that they brought up, but then when the moment mattered, no one was willing to stand up. And as you mentioned earlier, you had Phillip who made, a snap and kicked out on the full. There was a moment, I think it was about 2.5-3 minutes to go, where Steele was running down the middle and Mitch Owens kicked it to the pocket and not to Steele.
Oh, that one killed me.
Yeah, I saw your face right then just light up. You're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. That for me was the one. It's just poor ball movement where we really need to work on that. And it's good timing that I brought up Mitch Owens because there's a comment here from Jack that I'll quickly bring up. Can we have 1/4 of Owens in the midfield? No ruck is all I want. And I think honestly, Jack, every St Kilda fan is in the exact same boat. And you guys can disagree if you don't feel like that. But I think putting him for a half is going to really show us what he can do.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, especially with Windhanger out, it's a perfect opportunity to just throw him right in there and let's see what he can do. And like you touched on, we're just missing that match winner. And I'm a little bit sick of these games where the game's in the balance and it's up for grabs, and we just don't have anyone that says, "I got this." Like, back in the day, it was your Rewalds, it was your Hayes, your Goddard. You just knew, like, we'll be sweet. We've got these guys. Whereas now it's just like, who have we got? And as good as Steele is, and don't want to take anything away from Steele, but I'd love for him to just be that captain who just says, you know what? And it was almost like we had everyone waiting for someone else to be that player. I think Ross even said it, but no one actually put their hand up and did it. And that's not taking anything away from Steele and Seb even, who had really good games, but just not that clutch, like, game over, we got this,
Yeah, I think Steele's a very different leader to what some other captains have been. Nick Rewalt was probably one of the best ones the league's seen, let alone St Kilda. But I'd love for Steele to be sort of like a Luke Hodge. When things start to go wrong, and not after the 5th or 6th goal, but after the 2nd goal, to start, putting players accountable and, not getting in their face and being, insanely rude about it, but to hold them account and say, look, this is what needs to be fixed. This needs to change. So that way we can have a chance of winning. And I feel like, Sam, you can disagree with that or you agree either way, but do you think that's a leadership change that, Steele can maybe implement to go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's just Steele. It's a team game. You have to hold each other accountable. But sort of circling back, I think the main positive of our game is also a big detractor, and that's our speed and our ball movement. We don't choose the right moments when to slow the ball down, slow the game down a bit, take control. It's just shoot it up there, whatever cost, kick it wherever, see how it goes. That's why we lost against Essendon. Run and gun doesn't always work, and unfortunately, we're not a GWS with a Whitfield and a Green and a Cogs running around our midfield who never miss a target. We can't afford to be doing that the whole time. So I think picking and choosing when to slow the game down and when to speed it up is crucial to success, because that's when all the errors come in. it's this split-second decision where it's like, okay, I'm going to kick the ball over here with this giant pack, and then it's swept up by an opposition player. So I think slowing the game down a bit more would be of benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Mitch Owens to steal that was missed was a perfect example of that, game awareness that we sometimes do lack, especially with some of our younger players, is, what's the best option? What's a good option, but what can be better? What can we, use to actually impact the scoreboard? There's a comment here from Mike. I'm assuming, Mike, you mean 3 and zip, but it should be 3 and zip. Skill errors that cost us in our 2 losses. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, I personally do. I think we could easily well be 3 and zip with a healthy percentage of 120, 130. But we sit here in 1 and 2. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a combination of skill errors and decision making that you've sort of touched on. Those those 50-50s where Mitchie goes long to a contest that doesn't really favour us when you've got Steele streaming into the forward 50 by himself, those kind of things. And, young players, more games under their belt experience will help that. But, I agree. In terms of where we sit at the moment, I think skill errors and decision-making has been our downfall.
I'd counter-argue that and say that Geelong kept us in the game and Collingwood made crucial skill errors that lost them the game. We were better than them and we deserved to win, ultimately. Probably should have won by a lot more. But the other side of the coin is all 3 teams we have played have made crucial skill errors, have missed their opportunities, and that's the thing. It's about grasping these opportunities and making the most of your moments. And the teams that do win and the teams that don't end up like being us against Essendon, where we lose by 4 points, shaking our heads and thinking, well, why did that happen? That's my sort of take. It's easy to say we could be 3-0. We could be. We could also be 0-3. So,
yeah.
I like your thinking there. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think it's sort of what separates, a great team from an okay one is finding a way to win. And even if you're having an ugly game or a bad game, the good teams still find a way to win, and we're not there. But yeah, I mean, you could look at the season and be like, oh, we could have been 22-0. Like, there's so many elements of a game we could be like, oh, if we only did this or that. So, you could talk about that forever. The reality is we're 1 and 2. We need to be 2 and 2 because the next couple of games are really going to be tough. We've got the Giants and then the Doggies, who we match up on okay with, but I think they're playing pretty good footy. So they're never an easy game. So Richmond's a must win, and we cannot go into it like we went into Essendon just thinking it's an easy win, because if we do that, we'll lose.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that has changed over the last sort of 12, 18 months since Ross Lyon stepped back into the club is even last year when we do lose a game, the response that we had the week after was usually pretty good. We saw that against Geelong. There was a few things that I think, Sam, you're right. Geelong probably let us stay in the game for a little bit longer than what we needed or what we should have been. But we worked on a few things and we responded really well against a strong team, even though Collingwood didn't play all that well on paper, and still physically they're still the reigning premier. So I would expect the same situation to happen this week, probably even at a more significant level, given that Ross didn't look too pleased with a few things that happened. And I think he would have gone to work on a few things with some certain aspects and game plans, but then really put it on the group to say, look, that week's done and dusted. Let's focus on Richmond and let's put in a really strong performance where we can make it, a 40, 50-point win and really start the season 2 and 2 and get that ball rolling.
Yeah, it's crucial. We can't go 1 and 3. That's a nightmare. That starts to, even at 1 and 2, I'm sitting here looking at it going, oh, this is just a typical St Kilda season when it's going to get to round 19 and we're relying on results to go our way to make finals. It's like, I feel like we should be getting close to being good enough that we don't have to be that stressed out come the end of the season. So, yeah, going 1 and 3 would be a disaster.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Going to bring up some last comments here, like this one from Marcus. Funny how it feels like our forward line does work overtime to get goals compared to other teams having it easy. That and our defenders losing one-on-ones is killing us. I just want to emphasize that sort of defense specifically, Marcus, and I want to get your guys' opinions on this. Callum Wilkie, All-Australian defender last year. Feel like first couple of games he was good. Last week, a little bit down. The sort of intercept was lacking, whether that was how Essendon was set up. But how important is he to our defensive setup?
Incredibly important. They hunt as a pack. If one of them has a bad game, they all do. That's the thing I've noticed. If one of them is really off, the rest of them get dragged down with it.
Mm. Yeah, there was like Wilkie at one end and Membry at the other, like two players you just really rely on for that consistent, solid game. And they both our whole team at stages looked like they were playing hungover. Like that's just how I would describe the standard of the game at times. But it was just really disappointing to see players like, Wilkie and Membry, who you're always back in. And they're probably the two players I would always say you back to win a one-on-one. But Membry couldn't even take a chest mark that still delivered to him, like lace out. Thankfully, Higgins cleaned it up, but just really uncharacteristic from like our two leaders. So I'm really hoping that they bounce back because I think it's pretty rare that they'd have two bad games in a row.
I think it was actually very wet on Marvel because there was one great vision, I think, in the third quarter where Brad Hill was standing in the middle, not even near the ball, and then fell over.
Huh.
My favorite part of the game. But people just kept falling over around the ground. And I think that was pink. But yeah, I don't think the conditions were that good despite it being under a roof.
That's good to know. That makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah, a little bit.
It was like Membry did miss a few marks. He missed the one that still delivered. I think it was like 40 lace out. It was absolutely it was divine. And everyone's just like, how do you drop that? You just ruined, one of the best plays.
He deserved to be on a highlight reel, that kick, but he dropped the chest mark.
It was nearly identical to the kick that he got from Naz against Collingwood at the G, where Naz was on the wing and just laced it out, 40 out. But then he dropped one in the square as well. I think it was a high ball or a long ball that came in, and he just did a little shove and just straight through the hands. So as you said, Alana, I think for both of them, they did have bad games, but it's a rarity, and both of them will be looking forward to turning that around against Richmond this weekend. So we might wrap it up there for this week, guys. We've had some really good discussions. Final teams will come out tomorrow as we head up to Adelaide for Gather Round Sunday. Don't forget Candy Stripes. Me and Tom will rep him tonight. Alana and Sam missed the memo, so that's okay. But no, if you can get your hands on the Candy Stripes, they look good. They feel good as well for this year's edition. And then we'll post the final team or the confirmed team. I think it's about 5 o'clock tomorrow night. So I just want to thank Sam. Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Tom, for joining me tonight. Had some really good conversations. And as well, thank you for everyone at home that has been commenting. And as always, go Saints.
Go Saints.
Thank you. Go Saints.